It's podcast day. It's podcast day. Welcome in. Welcome in. Welcome to the heyBrownBerry podcast. What an awkward beginning, and I'm going to stumble a bit through the first portion of this podcast. Those of you who have been here before will have patience with it, and those of you who are visiting me for the first time may be a bit confused. Normally a podcast has a very polished beginning, and it starts off with a pretty routine list of things, but I had such a hard time just turning on this camera today that I can't offer you that. But what I can offer you is a welcoming spirit and an invitation to join me in conversation anyway. It's amazing what a list of shoulds can feel like. This is a podcast where I talk about my making journey, and I've done a lot of that in the last several months, and I want to share it with you. And each time I publish an episode, that is an invitation for conversation and connection. So please know that aside from my bumbling beginning, that spirit exists here, and you are welcome to it. I haven't sat down to do a longer podcast in a little while. I have enjoyed filming tutorials and putting out shorter videos, which I'm calling timeouts. I invite you to take a timeout with me. I have a couple videos posted that are only a few minutes long, and in one of them I'm spinning, and in the other one I'm knitting, and it's just meant to be a bit of a break. I think time has become a whole new currency in this year. It's the end of September in 2020, and I am certainly feeling like time has a whole new meaning. How I spend my time, what I give my time to. Even the way in which this year feels like it is in fast forward and also in slow motion, all at the same time. It's just this very weird mix for all kinds of reasons. Lack of time is not really the issue. It's really the oddness of time in 2020 and how strange it feels for a year to be speeding along, for it to be the end of September, and I'm not really sure what happened to the other months this year, and for time to also be crawling and moving in slow motion in some ways. A global pandemic means we'd all like to potentially be in the future already, where things have been solved and resolved and are getting better. Just complete unrest in some certain areas, especially here in the US, definitely makes it feel like if things could just move faster and we could get to the after, that would be excellent, but that's not really how things work. And some of the things that we're fighting for, including justice, take time. So yeah, it's just a strange mix. I have every intention of creating conversation here, and so I want to give myself some grace and give myself some patience, and you all always offer me that too. Let's talk about what is surrounding me. In preparation for this episode, I put a lot of things on my chair here next to me because I thought if I can see them, then I'll remember to share them with you. The most recent thing that has happened here at heyBrownBerry Land is that I co-hosted and co-organized a retreat with my friend Choi, who is the owner-operator of Middlebrook Fiberworks. And that retreat was a virtual gathering that took place last weekend, and it was the Creative Advocacy and Networking Retreat. If any of the folks who attended that retreat are watching, hi, hello, welcome. Anne and I put together what we felt was a very necessary event. We invited people of color who are in the fiber community, particularly those running a business, to invest in themselves and spend the equivalent of 2 full days with us, really digging into what they need to flourish in the fiber community, and also to center themselves in a community where we are a minority and we are often underrepresented. And it's really hard to sum up an event like that. It was incredible. It was necessary. It was enriching. Our participants each took a turn to describe the event in one word at the end, and the words that they used really let us know that the time was right, the context was needed, and we had the benefit of some incredible speakers and sponsors to make that happen. So I'm proud of it. I'm happy that other folks recognize the need for representation in our community. If you'd like to see some pictures and snapshots from that event, you can certainly check the hashtag CanRetreat2020. I've posted about it quite a bit on my Instagram, and so you're welcome to learn a bit more about it by checking that out. A public thank you to everyone who was involved, to everyone who attended. Thank you for just making that a part of my year. I appreciate that. I like when I'm watching podcasts that the podcaster, if they're wearing something that they've made or that they want to share, that they often will share and talk about it. I'm wearing my pajamas. I'm wearing my sheep pajamas. There was a certain level of comfort that I wanted to have to get in front of the camera today. And so today is pajamas. And I'm looking down a little bit at a project that I'm working on. And that's what I'd like to chat with you about. I'm making a sweater called Citrine by Greene. It's a pullover. Well, the design is shown as a pullover. And I've been wanting a couple of things. I've been wanting to work with this yarn, which I'll show you in a second. And I've been wanting to put a sweater on the needles because I'm actually really enjoying longer term projects lately. I'd started out with sewing patchwork to start putting together project bags and quilt blocks. And then I cast on a crochet blanket, and now I've put another sweater on the needles. And I'm really enjoying sinking into the fact that this is not an instant gratification project. And actually, some of the most time that I spent on it was working through the numbers and the sizing. Do you do that when you start a project? Do you go through an exercise of planning? I actually enjoy that with sweater knitting, actually with any project. Sometimes before I put my hands to the materials, I like to plan first and sink into that part of the process. Not every time. Sometimes I just want to get something going. Let's be honest. But with sweater projects that I've done recently, I have found some joy in looking at the sizing information and looking at the details of construction and just really visualizing myself actually going through those steps so that first piece can have its own time. With this project, I actually needed to do that because I heard from other folks who've made it and saw for myself in the measurements that the sleeves are quite narrow. The body is meant to have a lot of positive ease, several inches, so that it hangs and it's loose, but the sleeves are very fitted. And that's not my preferred style for a sweater. I actually prefer to have more ease in especially the upper arm, and less ease in the body than some of the boxier style sweaters that have been quite popular lately. So I did some calculation and came to the decision that for this sweater I'm going to need to knit the body in one size and the sleeves in a larger size, which is fine because I'm thinking about that from the beginning instead of figuring it out after trying it on. The sweater is knit from the bottom up, so I don't have all of my pieces here with me, but let me talk to you about the yarn first. I'm knitting this in Mayak, a blissfully soft, squishy, round, bouncy yarn. The color I would describe as a dusky teal on a pretty dark gray base. Here's my swatch. I swatched some of the ribbing that's called for in the pattern, and then some stockinette. I'm knitting this on a US 6 4mm needle, and you can see that in stockinette it's quite drapey at this needle size, and there isn't a lot of gaps and spacing in the fabric. Very happy with how that came out, and I want to share with you really quickly what I did with this swatch. I knit up the swatch, and typically I would soak it and then I would put it out on a blocking mat and pin it out, which does involve a little bit of tugging on it slightly to smooth it out. But I learned from Rachel Smith of the Woolen Spinning podcast. She mentioned that with some of her swatches, she actually puts them in the washing machine on a spin cycle for a few minutes. That was the first time I had ever tried that with a swatch, and I will probably do that from now on. It only took a few minutes to get most of the water out of this after soaking, but I immediately could see what the fabric would look like without me tugging on it or pinning it out into a specific shape. So I trust this measurement for right now as something to go on. Sweater knitting is comforting in a couple of ways for me. One is that a long-term project allows me to really sink in, and it feels good at a certain point in the project to just return to it and stitch away. But it's also contributing to my wardrobe, and because I've done the calculations I need to get what I think will be the right sizing for me, it will mean that another piece in my wardrobe is going to be made specifically to fit me, which I'm very excited about. The fabric appears to be pretty lightweight. I think that because it's yak, it's going to still be quite warm, which is okay. And the color is, I love the color of it. I'm really excited about that. I think it's going to look quite nice against my skin. So it is knit bottom up. It is knit in pieces. I'm actually knitting the front and back concurrently, so I have the front stitches on one set of needles and the back stitches on another. I'm using the Addi Rocket Squared. They're metal needles. And they are called squared because they have this textured square shape to the needle shaft. There we go. So instead of just being a rounded tube, it's squared and has these little nubbly bits that I find very comfortable to knit with. They're light, and even though wood is very warm and flexible and I like wooden needles, I actually am noticing the difference in a very even gauge and a very easy knitting experience. I don't find soreness in my hands or anything like that. So yeah, Addy Rocket Squared, I can recommend them. They are meant to be ergonomic. That is why they have a square barrel shape on the needle. Talking of time, have you found yourself just jumping from one thing to another lately? Is anyone else experiencing that? I definitely am. Even sitting here and stitching, I am willing myself to complete this row because in many scenarios, I would already have put this down mid-row and picked up my phone or picked up something else, and my mind and my hands are off to another thing, and I haven't even completed the 100-something stitches on this piece. It's I don't know, my brain is craving some kind of busyness. I think there's so much that's going on that I feel at times that I'm just trying to fill minutes with as many things as possible, which is a difficult thing because none of those things get my full attention and time. So I'm going to do my best to knit a complete row each time I start one. Spinning more lately. I realize that the fact that I have so many options for making often means that I do jump around a bit, but I have been spinning, you know, a few days out of the week, and I finished this recently. This is a 2-ply, definitely a worsted yarn. I haven't done all of my calculations about yardage and wraps per inch yet, but I finished plying this yesterday and it is so squishy. This is a fiber from Cat and Sparrow UK. I have spun with their fiber before and really enjoyed it. I intended for this to be a striping sock yarn. I swatched for my first prep of it, and the intention was that I would spin it in sections by color. So I started out with some of the gray, and then I drafted and prepped the aqua and was trying to move through the fiber in intentional stripes, because I thought I would spin it quite fine and make socks that were striping. But it was such a struggle. What do I mean by that? When it comes to knitting, I often hear people say, you know, I let the yarn tell me what it wanted to be. And I think I've done that myself too with some projects where I intended to use a yarn for a certain thing. I start that thing and it just isn't working out the way I wanted it to. And I'm very willing to scrap that plan and leave that yarn alone and choose another one, or take that same yarn and make it into something else. I seem to struggle with that with spinning because I don't know why. I think it's because I'm new to it still, and so I don't actually know what all of my options are for how to spin a fiber and what the proper drafting and spinning method is. And it also might be that I just haven't experienced every fiber that's out there. So, you know, I don't recognize all the properties that would go into how I spin. So you can see that this is not a stripy yarn. It's barber poled, and it has all three of the primary colors that were in the braid, which were a white, a teal, and a gray, mixed in and combined with each other. I had to let go of my original thought about how to spin this and let the fiber tell me how it wanted to be spun, which as it turns out is spun from the fold. If you're a spinner, you'll recognize some of this terminology. If you're not, that's okay. I spun it from the fold, and it's a semi-woolen spun, so there's lots of air in here. And that was after much trial and error. And when I say trial and error, I mean that I sat at the spinning wheel and I would start drafting, and the fiber would break very often, and it would not ever feel like I was in some kind of flow where I'm just treadling at the wheel and the fiber is flowing from my hands onto the flyer. And I need that from my spinning. I need it to flow and I need it to be rhythmic. And so this time it took some stops and starts, and it actually took spinning and then knitting up this swatch to see what the property of this fiber is. It's a combination of Polworth, Shetland, and some silk. And the Polworth is very spongy, and the Shetland is quite grabby, and the silk being so smooth and not the same staple length, I needed to account for that if I wanted it to work well. And after swatching and spinning this, I saw how much it bloomed. So I just had to accept that this fiber wants to be airy and bouncy, and not a tight worsted spun that I would normally do for socks. So that's okay. Once I settled into that, I was able to spin this quite quickly. And once I saw how it turned out after washing, I was very happy with the fact that I just let it be. And so instead of socks, it may be a yarn that I combine in the yoke of a colorwork sweater. It might be a hat. It could be worked into a cowl, or something that just lets it be this light and airy woolen fabric. Right now it's just some hand spun I'm happy that I made. Regardless of what the thermometer says, it is autumn, and I am definitely embracing all things fall. One of them is I'm participating in the Falling Leaves Sock Cal, which is hosted by my friend Denise. You may know her as Earth Tones Girl. I'm actually knitting a pair of socks from my design, the R&R sock pattern. And I've started these recently. They're toe up, and they are knit in 2 colors. One of the yarns was hand dyed by my friend Hannah Thiessen. It's naturally dyed, different plant materials, and the other one is actually my hand spun. This is a John Arbin Textiles fiber. I am a John Arbin super fan. This is called Galetta Guitar. It is Corriedale, and I've spun it into a 2-ply, and I absolutely love it. I really like the combination of colors together, and I'm also enjoying the 2 different yarn types. This is a very round, bouncy yarn. I'm pretty sure this is a merino alpaca with a bit of nylon. a very round 3-ply, so really nice stitching. And then my handspun is a 2-ply, pretty loosely plied, drapey, light. But the combination in these socks is working out really well. The R&R Socks pattern is made with what I call a staggered rib. And so you're knitting with one color each row. And just by changing the stitch pattern every couple of rows, you get this cross-hatching pattern. And on the back, which in this case is the bottom of the foot, you have single row stripes. I'm really enjoying this. I'm especially enjoying participating in Denise's Falling Leaves sock cal because her Ravelry group is very active. She's very active on Instagram and sharing sock projects, and I just like the community feel of it. She does such a great job of bringing people together. When I first went into her Ravelry group to talk about my plans, this was fiber, and I was contemplating, should I just use a yarn from my stash or should I challenge myself a little bit and spin a yarn specifically for a sock project? And there was some good encouragement to go for the spin. So that actually got me to the wheel, which was great. I'm loving that. Other fall things, I'm going to be in the virtual lounge at Indie Untangled Everywhere. I will put a link to the registration and information site for that. Indie Untangled Everywhere is this year a virtual event featuring many independent makers, yarn dyers, designers, and Lisa Chamoff asked if I would do a 1-hour meet and greet with any of you who are interested. So Saturday, October 17th at noon, I will be in the Indie Untangled virtual lounge, and I'm hoping to see you there. It would be amazing to see you there and to have that time with you. So I'll make sure you're linked to that in the description box. That's a very fall festival. It's been running for a few years. Lots of things like that are happening. I think companies and events are really making a great effort so that those of us who still want to have community feel with an organized structure can get that through Zoom and other things. So yeah, if you're interested in that, I think it's general admission $5, and you know, the marketplace feel and time, one-on-one time with designers will all be available over the course of a few days, October 15th through the 17th. Let me know if you have questions about that. I'd be happy to answer. I'm fortunate that I can work from home. I did not work for a company for about a year, and I learned a lot about myself and about how I wanted to spend my time in that year. And then I returned to work for a company that I had previously worked for in May. And so having a regularly scheduled job I need to show up for has me arranging my time very specifically. But I'm grateful that it's all virtual, it's all remote. I get to be in the comfort of my house. I'm very grateful for that. And it's also meant that I cherish my time to spend making, and I have intentionally started projects so that I always have something going. This is my crochet make at the moment. It's really quite large already. This is a folded version of my crochet granny square blanket. I started this, I don't remember when. If you're using Ravelry, I am tracking my projects on Ravelry, and you are always welcome over there to see some details. I started this project with this purple yarn, which is a hand-dyed skein that I had from my friend Grace. Hi, Grace. Grace is my accountability buddy for podcasting. We try to challenge and encourage each other to share with you all. Hey, love. This yarn I had for more than a year, and I just love the color of it. So because I had never done a granny square before, I challenged myself to make a granny square and to get comfortable in the rhythm of making a granny square so that I could make something. I wasn't sure at the time that it would be a blanket, but that's what it turned into, this large masterpiece. It's so full of memories as well, because every yarn that I've added to it was either part of a sock design. This yarn here. This is Garnbutikken Fortuna, which I got in Norway from the dyer and owner of that shop. And I put it into my sock pattern design called Before and After, which is a toe-up sock. And I love commemorating it in this blanket. Let's see. There's handspun. This beauty, the peachy pink, is a fiber that my friend Paige sent to me. The base, the fiber itself, was unknown breed, but she sent it to me undyed so that I could play in my dye pots. And I dyed it with avocado. What's it here? Whoop. I need to work backwards. Yeah, this peachy pink. And I just love that she was encouraging me to do something I enjoy. And so I get to commemorate that in here. And yeah, there's just a lot that goes into a scrappy blanket. It's a kind of memory keeping that I have a significant appreciation for. I am using a size F hook, 3.75 millimeter. It is the Tulip brand. Ergonomic with a nice squishy shaft for crocheting. I quite enjoy that. And it's just a pick up and put down project. Do you have something like that where it doesn't have a deadline, doesn't have an intended recipient? Its purpose is to give me making time that doesn't require a lot of thinking. Funny I say that though. I did put it down long enough that I actually forgot how to do the movement between one round and another. So the way this is formed as a square, when you come to a corner, you increase by doing 2 sets of double crochet clusters in the corner. And so that's increasing you out evenly at each corner. And it also makes for a nice curved shape. And then there's a specific series of stitches that you need to do when you come to the end of a corner to kind of join up the beginning and the end of that round. And I put it down for so long that I forgot how to do those steps, and I had to go back. Actually, I have a reference book that I'm using. I actually learned how to do the stitches from this book. It's a Reader's Digest book published quite some time ago. And because it said crochet stitches on it, I thought, I wonder if I could find granny square instructions in there. Yeah, this was published back in 2003. But they had a standard granny square in here, so I had to go back to my reference book. Sometimes you have to do that. Loving it. It gets bigger and bigger because every time I think, oh, this will make a nice final round, then I find another little scrap or another yarn that I want to add in. I'm not only using scraps. This was from a full skein of very woolly, Norwegian woolly yarn. I think it was Norwegian. It was given to me by Ellie, who is Skein of Skein Knits. And I saw it in my stash and I thought, oh, I really like that color for adding in. And so that is going in right now. So I'm not only doing it with minis or scraps or leftovers. Some of these I intentionally pulled from full skeins. Any crochet projects on your hook right now? I know many of us do much more than one craft, and I actually love to hear from you all talking about the different crafts that you enjoy. There's a lot of freedom in this. It might go to one of my daughters. I'm even thinking that when they come home from college later in the year, if one of them wants to take this back with them as a comfy blanket from home, I will encourage them to do that. I've been doing some sewing as well. I spent a good portion of late spring and early summer at the sewing machine. I was really enjoying it. If you go back some months in my Instagram, you'll see that I was doing some quilt blocks. I haven't made an actual quilt yet, just the blocks, and that's okay too. And I really got into scrappy sewing for doing some patchwork. When I started, it was only with the intent of having slow meditative time at the machine, and so I made quite a few blocks, fabric blocks, out of leftovers and scraps from my stash, solely with the intent of sitting down at the machine and putting pieces together and feeding them through the machine and chain piecing, quite literally some days for hours. Something about that repetitive movement with color was exactly what I needed. I haven't done it as much recently, but I had a moment with that. I was making pieces like this, patching together strips, then attaching other strips. Initially, I would have been making this as a bigger block, and then I cut it down on purpose on the bias in this case. But it was really about the time spent piecing together, patching together. I pulled over a few things that I'd been working on. I put up some project bags in my Etsy shop made in this style. This one is in my shop right now. I love project bags. I love totes. I love pouches. Yeah. I love them. So that's what I started making when I decided to put pieces together, and I sold a few in the Etsy shop. This one is a combination of fabric that's been in my stash for a really long time, pieces of clothing from my daughters that no longer fit but had parts that were not in a condition to be given away. So I cut patches and pieces of those to use as materials. This teal on the inside is a material that I got from one of my favorite places called Resource Depot here. It's an intentional reuse kind of warehouse where people bring materials that they no longer need, and artists and teachers and crafters can go there, and for no money at all we can rescue those materials from the landfill and use them. You'll see it has a denim pocket inside. Oh, sorry. Let me show that to you a little better. This is a pocket from a pair of jeans with all of its embellishment still on there, which I seamed and stitched to the inside of the bag. And some leather cording for the drawstring. Oh, my label. I really like my little labels. Yeah, so putting this together is a multi-day, multi-step process, but I really enjoy it. And just little things that please me and I hope would please others, like, you know, putting pleats in, putting in a little pleat here, just because that's the way the fabric folded when I was putting it all together. And I'm like, I like that. I'm leaving that in. I'm stitching that in on purpose. The combination of colors and materials. I do have some quilt batting. They have a lot of leftovers at Resource Depot, and so I take pieces of quilt batting that are very small. You know, someone may have brought in all of their scrap leftovers from a quilting project, and so you're not getting sheets of batting. It may come in small pieces, and I actually enjoy patching those together as well and making a piece that's full enough to line the inside of a bag and give it a bit of squish. I've really enjoyed that. Other than colors, I've also taken things like my daughter's old jeans and done single color, single material patchwork. You can see by the back how many pieces go into this. Because I really like the lines and I like the different shapes that come along with just putting one piece next to another. I could see myself making clothing out of these patchwork pieces, so like a skirt or a tank top or something that's a combination of different fabric types, certainly different colors and prints. So I don't like this, for example. I have no idea what this will end up being. Most of the time when I sit down to the sewing machine to make these, they don't have an intention or a purpose from the beginning. The purpose is the piecing. And then another thing I've been enjoying is taking these upholstery samples. This is a cotton polyester upholstery sample that comes from one of those huge interior decorator design books. I mean, thousands of pounds of those get thrown away all the time because once people have used the samples or a new season or a new style comes, there's no use for them in that industry anymore. So I got some of these books of samples and I use them, and then I combine them with other patchwork pieces. And so I laid this one out thinking I might make a zippered tote with this. Oops, sorry. This backing, this is part of the front. I want to point out these little sheepies. You see those guys? They're cute. That's a fabric by my friend Katie Greene. And I got some more of her fabric. That is the cotton. And this is the cotton linen blend. Which is in this gorgeous, natural, hefty cotton linen with all the different sheep breeds, hand drawn by Katie. So typical me, I have plenty of this. I have a good amount of it to make just about anything, including a garment potentially. But I'm afraid to cut into it. We make things so precious because we prize them. And really a great way to honor them is to use them. And I will use it. I think a lot about what I want it to be. And right now it's just gorgeous for petting and looking at. And she so kindly sent me some samples of the cotton version. And so to honor that generosity, I put a little patch in here, and it's a reminder to me, use the fabric. I will get back to the sewing machine at some point. I kind of walk by it now and think, oh, remember when I used to sit with you for hours? I'm trying not to put a lot of guilt around what I am what I might be and might not be doing at any given time. Honestly, we all need to give ourselves a break this year. Let's see. That's a good amount of sharing for right now. I really just wanted to reach out and say, hi, how are you? What's going on in your corner of the world? There's so much I could share, but I really don't feel that it all has to go into one podcast episode. Let's be honest. I am wishing you well. I am thinking of all of you. Having a connection with a portion of our community last weekend reminded me how fulfilling, I was going to say thrilling. It was thrilling, but also how fulfilling it is to have you all and to have people in my life that make days better. I hope you have that too. I'm wishing that for you. If you don't have it and you need it, try to create it where you can. Thanks for visiting with me. I'll see you again another time, hopefully soon. Feel free to comment on this video. Feel free to find me on Instagram at heyBrownBerry. Reach out. I'm here. I'll see you next time. Bye. Mwah.